All right, well, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining this morning's Facebook Friday with John L. Scott. Thanks to the team and our moderators, Nick and Aaron. We'll have some Q&A a little bit later. I'd like to say good morning to everyone. I'm James Colburn. This is the episode number 6 of Facebook Fridays with John L. Scott. John L. Scott was founded just under 90 years ago and is located on the West Coast in California, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. Our third generation owner, Lennox Scott, was recently ranked number 25 in the Swanepoel 2020 Power 200 as one of the most powerful and influential leaders in residential real estate brokerage, with over 110 franchise and company-owned offices, and ranked the 15th largest franchise brokerage in the country. All of our agents and brokers are all collectively circled around our company's core leading value, which is living life as a contribution. Facebook Fridays is our opportunity to become smarter and better human beings by hearing direct from outstanding thought leaders, both in and outside of the real estate industry, who exemplify excellence in business, contribution to others, and innovation. So this week, our special guest is Dan Caro, a professional musician and inspirational speaker. At the young age of 2 years old, Dan was burned from head to toe in a horrible gasoline fire in his family garage. As a young boy, he underwent a dozen plus reconstructive surgeries in the first 12 plus years of his life. As with all fire injuries, the wounds are wrapped and then rewrapped. And there was a point in his surgeries when the doctors unwrapped his hands and feet to find that his hands and feet and toes had literally fallen off his body. Dan was not expected to live over the age of 3 or 4 years old. We will hear about this moment in the hospital room while surrounded by his families, his doctors, and even the first responders to the accident, that a light switch flipped on in Dan's life that would change him forever and allow him an incredible platform to share compassion and inspiration and a life of resiliency that ultimately became this amazing opportunity for Dan to be an inspirational speaker and a professional musician. So please join me in welcoming Dan Caro to Facebook Fridays with John L. Scott. Good morning, Dan. How are you doing?
Doing well, James. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So thank you so much for joining us. You're in New Orleans or New Orleans, correct? Am I saying it right?
Either way is fine.
Yeah, and the city of jazz. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Every day is wonderful, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate that this opportunity, and appreciate Dan Wingard, our manager at our office leader at our Redmond, Washington office, for introducing us. And you and I had a great chance to meet a couple weeks ago and learn more about your life. And Dan, I'd like to ask you to take us back to your earliest memories, the fire, the surgeries, the years of treatment. Share with the group, kind of unpack that for us.
Sure thing. Yeah, I was 2 years old, living just on the west bank of the Mississippi River of New Orleans in a little town called Tarrytown. And it was St. Patrick's Day, 1982. And I was in the garage. I escaped my mother's supervision, which is something that all 2-year-olds try to do. And we were in the backyard, and I escaped into the garage to find a wagon. I knew that my parents stored a wagon, which was my favorite toy, in the garage. And on the way into the garage, I knocked a can of gasoline over. And the gasoline vapor spread throughout the air, and the water heater pilot ignited the vapor. And I was caught in an explosion in the garage. So my mother was not too far from where I was. She heard the scream. She heard my screams, comes running into the garage, um, pulls me out. And then a neighbor across the street saw what was going on and then called 911. We were just down the block from a volunteer fire station. So they arrived on the scene within, a couple of minutes. And then we were immediately en route to Charity Hospital, which no longer exists in New Orleans, where they had a burn ward. And then spent 72 hours there in absolute critical condition, the worst possible case scenario you can imagine. My parents came to the hospital. The doctors told them that there was practically no chance of survival. Usually, a burn this severe as I was doesn't make it past 72 hours. And even if they did make it past the 72 hours, they would have no quality of life. So just the prognosis was as grim as possible. So the doctor did diagnose me with third and fourth degree burns over 80% of my body. Pretty significant. As you mentioned in your intro, I have no hands and fingers because you're right. In the dressing changes during that early time in the hospital, my bones were so badly burned and brittle that they literally came off and crumbled into the bandages as the doctors and nurses unwrapped me for debridement processes before surgeries. So, and unfortunately for myself, I have no recollection of any of that. My parents, however, were literally looking through the window as this was happening. So I can't even imagine anybody that's got kids out there who has ever endured any type of thing like that. It's got to be so horrifying. But in spite of all of that, there was something higher at work, it seems. Some force that was guiding the ship here, and decided to change course from absolute helplessness and despair to that of opportunity and positivity. And a local Shriner from New Orleans, popped his head in the door in the 11th hour. Literally, my life was in the balance. And I actually did die a couple of times in the ER, in the operating room. One of the biggest problems that a burn survivor deals with, other than the fact that they have tremendous external injuries, is the internal injury and the intake of overheated air. The firefighters say that I was in about of a 2,000 degree oven, basically. I mean, it's pretty serious heat. So when you inhale in 2,000 degrees, it just incinerates everything inside. So my lungs were badly damaged, and that I didn't have any skin on my body. I was vulnerable to bacterial infections, and anything that was coming in was looking to kill me. And so I did pass away or flatline 3 times in the initial run. But that Shriner who came in told my parents about a hospital network that we have in North America called the Shriners Hospitals for Children. And they offered a safe place for my family and I to go free of charge for unlimited treatments. And not only that, this hospital system is a pediatric network hospital that is dedicated to the treatment of burns. And they have 3 other disciplines that they work, but this one particular hospital focused exclusively on burns in Boston, Massachusetts. So my parents, looking for every opportunity, every miracle that came their way, signed over the transfer papers, and I was airlifted to Boston. And then almost immediately when I arrived at the hospital, things started to change. And over the next, my initial stay in the hospital was 4 months, but ultimately I would go through 18 or 19 years of reconstructive surgeries. Before my 20th birthday, I had 80 reconstructive surgeries, and daily physical therapy, and just it was an interesting thing that happened.
Well, so Dan, during your time in the hospital and in obviously dozens of surgeries, your father wheeled in a TV and he played a movie. I'd like you to describe that moment. I know it was a big moment for you and really a direction changer for you. And I think the group would really enjoy hearing that story.
Sure thing. Yeah. It was 1982 when my injury occurred, and the Rocky movies, the boxer Rocky was pretty powerful in America, as he is still today. And I loved that movie before my injury, and my dad, just as sort of uh, a desperate call to do whatever it takes to help uplift the spirits of his boy, brought in, wheeled in this massive VHS. Remember those 80s VHS players? These massive concoctions of machinery and this TV. And even though I couldn't see, I was literally wrapped head to toe like a mummy. My eyelids were burned off as well. And so I had eye protection, so I couldn't see. He put the movie on just in the background with the volume up enough so where I could hear. And he tells me, as did some of the nurses who were there in the time period, that everything sort of changed in that moment. Once that movie came on, my spirits lifted. I started to get energy. I had a breathing tube, and I started to fight the tube. So and my heart rate started to accelerate, and everything sort of started to regulate, which was quite a miracle because that was kind of not possible. I was not doing that well. And then all of a sudden this movie created this magical experience that transitioned me to vitality again. And soon enough, within a couple of days, the tube was out, the feeding tube was out, and I was on the way to recovery.
And you had mentioned that all areas of your healing started to improve: your respiration, your blood pressure, your every piece started to improve. And the first responders had, even years later, had mentioned that was a turning moment for you.
Absolutely. And the character Rocky resonates with me, has always been a very profound, staple in my life. He's, even though he's fiction and he's the work of Sylvester Stallone's mind, and he's definitely my biggest non-real or non-family mentor.
I've heard you say that the fire was literally your single biggest gift in life. Could you explain that to the group?
Well, I'm not one to play what if scenarios. What happened is what happened. And I was given this particular life that includes fire, that includes a burn, that includes not having hands and fingers. And it's been a phenomenal experience. It's definitely had its low points, but what I've been able to endure at such a young age and experience at a young age has really helped shape my perspective and my life philosophy about tolerance, about perseverance, about acceptance, and had I not experienced such a severe, quote, trauma, which I don't see it at all as a trauma, I see it as an absolute gift, like you said. I don't know if I would have been able to endure that. So all I can think of is what I was able to endure, what I did experience. And to me, because I have so much that I can be thankful for, be grateful for, because of that it is a gift. And if I can be grateful for that accident and that trauma in my life, then it's not a negative. And if it's not a negative, then it's either neutral or positive. And it's definitely not neutral, because I'm here talking with you guys and sharing with you and hopefully uplifting and inspiring people just like I've been throughout my entire life. And that is an absolute blessing. And if it's a blessing, then it's not anything other than an absolute brilliant divine gift.
Thank you, Dan. So there's this moment around tying your shoes for the first time. And just to lead up to that, and I've done a little bit of research. I'll obviously watch several YouTube videos on you, and I learned about this tying your shoes moment, and I'd like the group to hear about that.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, I think everybody has a Mount Everest moment, you know. It's that one impossible peak you have to summit in your life. And a lot of people probably automatically go to drumming because they know I'm a drummer, right? No way, that was easy compared to this, you know. Tying my shoelaces was the absolute most challenging thing I've ever had to face. And I always tell people, if you want to know why I feel that way, just go get a saw and cut your hands off, and then go try to tie your shoes, and then you'll see real fast why it's so difficult, right? Those fingers are kind of important, right? And when you don't have them, you just have to adapt. And I spent my whole childhood and my whole adult life adapting. And I was a very stubborn, independent kid. I could even see it in home video footage before the accident. Even at 1 and 2 years old, I was stubborn and independent. I hated when people did things for me. I didn't like charity. It was the way I was born, I guess. But you know, when you have to ask, you know, for help every single day because you can't do something, and that's like your whole life is trying to fit in and be considered equal, it can be debilitating. It's demoralizing. It just takes the wind out of your sails. So I made it my life's mission to figure it out and to do it in a natural way. You know, I mean, I could have devised a strategy or used slip-on shoes, and I did Velcro and slip-on shoes, but nobody else was wearing those shoes in my school. You know, everybody had tennis shoes, tie shoes. So I needed to do that too. So I spent 7 years figuring it out. And after 7 years of that journey, I finally figured it out. And I'll tell you this, when it happened, I mean, it was very clumsily done the first couple of times, but it was so rewarding and so revealing. It was almost as though I had been doing it the whole time. You know, it's just like you know, just a matter of perception change, a little shift in perception, and then everything changed. And it was
When my kids tied their shoes for the first time without your injuries, it was clumsily done. So, so you're with the rest of them there. And I will tell you that we used Velcro shoes, even though it was not the coolest thing, because it made our life easier just to get out of the house quicker. But that is great. You're right. They're not the shoe of choice typically. That's just a great story. Just I think that accomplishment opened up other doors for you. Just obviously you've chosen some other paths in your life that require doing things that someone without fingers would not be able to do. I want to talk about the music. So you grew up in a family of musicians. So your 3 brothers were musicians or are musicians. Your dad is a musician. The only person that's not actively a musician is your mom, correct?
Correct.
So tell us about like the burning, or the question is, why drums? I mean, you know, like there's other instruments you could have played, right? So
Well, that's well, not really. The drums seem to be the only logical one. But you know what? Here's the deal. I think everybody is a drummer. Everybody's a drummer. You have a heartbeat, then you have your own internal rhythm. And if you can find that rhythm and you can sync your life up to that, then you're a musician no matter what. So maybe even though my mother doesn't play music, she's definitely a drummer too. And so are we all. But no, it was definitely in the house growing up. Music was a regular thing. My dad played semi-professionally when he was young. His grandparents, his mother his mother, who passed when he was very young, was a professional singer. His dad was a professional trumpet player and band leader in New Orleans in the 50s and 60s. And he grew up to do the same thing. And he just had music so so present in our house, you couldn't escape it. And also, even though we weren't technically living in New Orleans proper, music was constantly in the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And we were always in New Orleans, so there was always street musicians. And of course, we have parades, not just for Mardi Gras. There are parades all year long, pretty much. I mean, you can always find a parade somewhere, or at least a brass band marching down the street. So we always heard those drums coming, and you could hear the drums from miles away. And I was always curious, so I would always ask my dad, because I knew he played, what were they doing? Like, I didn't understand musical concepts and music theory and rhythm, but I just was curious as to what the beats were. So he would beat them out on my back when I was really young and just play along with whatever was happening. And that was an awesome experience for me. It was like a bonding thing, but it just took me back to an energy that I kind of knew that I couldn't possibly have known. That's kind of getting out there, but it was a very primal, instinctual thing that rooted me, and it felt good. And as I started getting older, that urge started to intensify. And then my two older brothers were already playing at the time. One of them's 3.5 years older, and the other one is 8 years older than me. So they were a little bit older. And then by the time I was 12, pretty much right after I tied my shoes for the first time, I said, "Hey, Dad, let's go get a drum. I want to play drums. I don't have enough fingers to play piano or guitar, right? I don't like singing. I mean, I sing, but I don't really like my voice too good, so I don't sing that well. It is what it is. I'm working on it. But what else could I do? I didn't know. So drums could beat on stuff. They could beat on things. Whether you could use sticks or your hands or whatever, there's always a way to beat on things. And I always did beat on things. So we went to the pawn shop, bought a snare drum and some sticks. Now the question is, how the hell am I going to hold these things? What do you do with that, right? You need hands, don't you? Well, yeah, that's an illusion in your mind that you need hands. All right, so how do I hold a stick? And today, guess what, James? I actually remembered to bring my sticks and wristbands, which I always forget in interviews to forget to. So I have a reconstructed thumb on my left hand that the Shriners were able to do. They were able to extract the thumb metacarpal, because I still have some metacarpal bones. They were actually to extract this, separate it, and elongate it over a series of procedures. And over several years, developing some muscle tone and ability to grip. So with my left hand, I'm able to grip the drumstick. And I use this wrap around the stick. It's kind of like leather, rubber kind of feeling, and it just allows me to grip a little better because I don't have anything to cover. So the stick always comes flying out. This just helps me to hold it a little bit more. All right, so on my right hand, however, I also have that thumb thing, but it doesn't really work. It doesn't move too well, and there's definitely not enough space in there to really grip a stick. So I need to come up with another method, which I did. So it took about a month to come up with this, trial and error. So I have a sweatband, tennis wristband, and I have a bunch of rubber bands doubled over on top of it. And then I put it over the wrist like that. Put the stick in the wrist, between the wristband and my wrist. And now I have a moving stick. And it's as simple as that. And it's cost like $2.25 for that piece of device. And that's almost a 30-year-old concept that hasn't changed.
And I've heard you say when that mechanism's all put together, that's a hand when it comes to drumming. That's the hand that is a hand necessary to drum. It's all that you know when it comes to playing drums, correct?
Oh, believe me, I have studied the hand more than any human being alive. I could be a hand surgeon, no doubt. If they would certify me, I could do better hand surgeries probably than anybody. But I know exactly what is required to play drums. And when I put that wristband on, I feel every single pressure point, every contact point, every place that you need to balance and rotate, every place you need to angulate. I understand how to rotate the stick laterally. I understand how to push it up and down without even doing anything but a simple, like tiniest shift in the wrist. And I've watched drummers and I've watched people in daily life with their hands. And this, my friends, is identical to a human hand. It doesn't look like one. It doesn't feel like one, but it is a human hand.
Dan, do you think you actually have, it's actually better the way you have it than if you actually had hands?
Well, that's an interesting question. I can't really answer that question definitively.
I mean, like in your conversations with other drummers, you know, and kind of, because I mean, I've heard you play and it's amazing.
Well, I do have two advantages. Well, two things that are unique to me with my right hand. I'm not going to call them advantages. One, because this is tight. Okay, first of all, this is a tight, like a tourniquet tight wristband. I have 5, like they're called number 64 rubber bands. Those are those like 1/4-inch thick rubber bands that you use, you know, and I have 5 of those doubled over wristband.
Mm.
So this is a thick thing that's on my wrist, plus the stick inside of it. And if I don't monitor that, I'm going to lose blood flow completely.
Yeah.
So that's a huge thing to concern myself with. But because it's so tight, and Dan Wingard, you're going to understand this, because it's so tight, when I bounce it, it allows for a super, super sharp and tight buzz. That's kind of hard to do with the regular hand, unless you put a lot of grip on it, which you're kind of not supposed to do. A lot of people think drummers are holding those sticks tight. You're not supposed to hold your drumsticks. If I pull a drumstick out of your hand, I should have no resistance. That's how light the drummer's grip should be. It's not a tight grip. So I have no choice but to have a tight grip with this. So I have a very unique rolling style, and I take advantage of that. I guess that's why I said I have an advantage. It forces me into doing lots and lots of rolls, which is great in New Orleans drumming because we do that a lot. But in regular pop drumming and R&B and funk drumming and stuff, that's not as common. So I have a unique approach to those styles. The second interesting unique thing for me is because the sticks slowly, as I start to play, slowly starts to come out. I have to reset that, right? Every now. So it's kind of like an old typewriter, right? You know, you pull it back, let's go to the next line. So I drop the stick tip on the head, which causes a buzz, and I ride that buzz all the way across the head into the snare drum rim on the opposite side, creating this very unique lick, this very unique thing that is only me. And it like is a click, and then it's like reset. And I've never heard anybody else do that, because why would anybody in the world do that? And it's funny because like only 3 people, and all 3 of them were not drummers, have said, you do this weird little thing with your hand and I don't know what you're doing, but it sounds really cool. I've never heard it before. What are you doing? And I was like, well, let me tell you what I'm doing. This is the benefit of not having hands.
Well, so Dan, you went from weekend warrior musician to professional musician. So tell the group about that process.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I started playing music when I was 12, and I had a really wonderful teacher, an old friend of my dad's, and he was a professional musician. And I progressed after we developed my stick holding technique. I progressed my skills very rapidly. I was full dedicated to it. I didn't care about anything else anymore. prior to picking up music, I was pretended I was an athlete. I mean, I played basketball and baseball at the local gymnasium and with my brothers and stuff, but that was over. My sports career was finished as soon as I found drums. And I dedicated every waking hour that I wasn't in school, sleeping, or eating to playing music. And I didn't care what it took. And I had a teacher who helped me for the first couple of months learn the foundation, the basics of drumming. And he was so impressed that I picked it up so quickly and had a mastery of those basic skills that he invited me to his gigs to play, to sit in on his gigs. And he was playing with professionals all over New Orleans. So at 13 years old, I was already sitting in and playing gigs with some really good musicians all throughout New Orleans and the region. So that carried on throughout all of high school. And then I started some bands with some friends in high school as well. And we played weekend coffee shop and community center gigs, battle of bands and whatnot. And as I graduated high school and got into college, that expanded exponentially. And then all of a sudden, I was working not only just on weekends, but during the week and, playing like happy hour gigs and 7 to 10 gigs. And then eventually it became so much so that it was competing with my college. And, by the time I was, 20, 21 years old, I had put more time into gigging than school, and one had to kind of go. So I chose to play instead of finishing school. And do I ever regret with that? Maybe, maybe not. But the point is, I was working, playing, doing what I needed to do, doing what I loved to do, doing what I wanted to do. And I was playing with the musicians that I wanted to play with, including all of the faculty at the schools that I was going to. So it was like, well, do I really need to finish? I mean, I'm already working with these guys. So, it was just a phenomenal experience. And there's nothing like learning on the job. I mean, I was growing as a person. I was growing as a drummer. I was growing as a band member. And it was just a wonderful thing, man. It was playing music is a special experience.
And you shared the stage with Carlos Santana.
Ultimately, that was sort of the highlight, I guess.
I've been able to go to a Santana concert. That's an amazing opportunity for you, I'm sure.
That was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, so, I want to talk a little bit about your passion and the message that you share. The group that's on the call and on Facebook Live, this is a large group of real estate agents, owners, managers, office leaders, and even our John L. Scott consumers can join the call and listen to this amazing story. And you have this amazing message of resiliency and just the lens that you look through. You mentioned to me that there's always going to be another fire, and you were conditioned at a young age to endure pain to kind of to ultimately succeed, that failure is not an option and never has been. And I want the group to hear a little bit about that and I guess your message to them.
Sure. Yeah, there's always going to be another fire. I mean, we're experiencing fires like crazy in our lives and in the world and in our country, of all different types, fires that we can't extinguish, unfortunate realities that we're dealing with. So, what I've learned early on is, you have to sort of embrace whatever comes into your way, and you can't really judge it. You can't have too many expectations in the sense that, if things don't go your way, then, something's wrong or whatever. I mean, rarely has anything gone the way I planned it. And even in the things that I know the best and plan for and have done hundreds of times, I've played thousands of gigs in my life, thousands upon thousands. Every single one of them goes differently than planned. So, and I do some of the same gigs day in and day out, but they change. There are so many variables that come in and out that are unknown that you can plan all you want, and that's great. But you've got to be willing, to adapt to anything that comes your way. And, and that could be as simple as just changing, your attitude, changing your judgment of a situation. That's something that I had to learn early on with gigs, especially with the egos that I deal with in the music industry. When you walk, I'm kind of like a hired gun, right? So I come from an area where in New Orleans, we have so many musical opportunities. You don't really just play with a band. You play with hundreds of bands. I play with a different band almost every day. And well, when we can physically go play, without pandemics and quarantines. But so I'm always walking onto a bandstand that I don't know, with people that I might not know, music that I might not know. And here I am expected to do a job, and I know what that expectation is, but I might not know any of the details. And I actually love walking onto a bandstand, not knowing who I'm going to meet, not knowing the music, and going in the job and knowing that I've done everything in my life to bring me to a level of proficiency and expertise that any scenario that comes my way, I can manage and handle with calmness and non-judgment and non-expectation, and be as though I've been in that setting for decades, as though I've been playing that gig for years. And that's all because I know that I've done everything I possibly can to align my spirit, my life, and my mission and my work in the same direction. And if you do that, and if you just appreciate everything that's in your way and all the opportunities, even the negatives that come your way, then even those most challenging situations that come through won't be that difficult. And you'll be able to navigate through. You might have a little rough water here and there, but you'll be able to navigate through. And if you can't, it's okay too. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to stop sometimes and say, maybe I'm not in my right mind. Let me come at this from a different angle, rather than just get all bent out of shape and then throw a fit and act like a little kid, which is unfortunately a lot of us do that. And we pound our fists and this isn't what we wanted. Let's get out of here. This is crazy. Y'all are stupid and all this stuff. You kidding me? That's not what life's about. That's not what we're here for. We're here to embrace what happens to us and love every second of it, period.
Amen. Well, we have a question, Nick, right?
Yeah. Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Doing fantastic.
Got a question. What is the most impactful life lesson you have learned?
Impactful life lesson I have learned. That's a long story. It's a good one, though. It's a good one, though. I've learned to, all right, we're all creatures of ego. I mean, we all have egos, right? But I learned how to put that ego down in an experience that I dealt with. When I was 17, I had a drum student that was not supposed to play drums. I mean, he was in a position, he was a quadriplegic, and he had about 20% mobility only on one half of his body. And he was written off as finished. And I was 17, just out of high school, riding this wave of excellence. And I'm the best because I was the section leader, and I had won all the competitions. And I thought I was the best, 17-year-old drummer in the whole world. And I was on my way to embark on a new teaching journey, and everything was great, and it was going to be perfect. And all of a sudden, my very first student is an impossible situation. And like I was just saying, I got mad, and the store owner, the music store owner who put us together for obvious reasons, I just didn't see those reasons because I was so in my own head, and I wanted a certain thing that I thought I should get, as far as the right kind of students and this and that. And then I had to learn really fast that, it was a reflection of my situation. And it was like I was being all the things that I despised in life, all the negative energy, all the bullying, all the name calling, all the comments, and the snickers and sneers, and all the people that didn't believe in me. I became that. Mm. And I directed all that energy towards another person. And I didn't even know I was doing it. I was so wrapped up in my own head, and I had to immediately shed that, and that this teaching opportunity is the thing that did it for me. And when I saw how it impacted this person and what I saw in his eyes, it was the worst feeling I ever felt. And I immediately shifted like a light switch. And that was the most profound experience of my entire life. And I realized that life is about serving people and giving your gifts to people. It's not about getting in your own head and relishing in the fact that you're the best or you're great at something. That doesn't even matter. It just matters that you use your gifts to inspire and share with the world.
Thank you. And thanks, Nick, for the question. You told me if you are doing what you are meant to do, you can't fail. So how would you further explain that?
Sure. Failure is an illusion. It's really not. Okay, so let me rephrase that. Failure only happens when you decide to walk away and accept your defeat, right? It just doesn't. But other than that, as long as you continue for the rest of your life, intention straightforward to attacking your goal and accomplishing it, even if you never succeed, you haven't failed. Even if you never succeed, you have not failed. You've given everything you've got to it. Some of us get there, some of us don't. But the finish line isn't the end. It doesn't matter. We're all getting to the finish line. That's when we take no more breath. That's when we see no more things with our eyes. That's when, we pass on. But is your life a failure just because you haven't succeeded at something that you wanted, even though you tried your whole life towards it? I don't think so.
So, Dan, I heard in an interview, you said you never have taken pain medicine.
Not willingly.
Willingly.
Because in the hospital, they kind of force it on you when you're a kid, Yeah. But as early as I can remember, I would refuse any pain meds that the nurses would come in. Doctors would even come in, and psychiatrists would come in and do a consult with me. And why aren't you taking pain meds? Something's not right here. And I'm like, no, something's not right because you're coming into my room, like thinking that it's abnormal for me not to take pain meds. So that's the problem. Even when I was 7 years old, I knew that was a problem. Not to discount anyone's pain. I know pain is real. Pain is definitely real. Physical and emotional pain is real. For some reason, this is part of the gift of fire. I didn't experience much of it. And the pain that I did have was very manageable. Very manageable. And I don't know how that happened. I can only attribute it to some higher spirit, higher purpose, higher power, like some divine source. You want to call it God or whatever, that's your choice. My deal was I focused my entire life energy to healing, and I healed.
Dan, you have some opinions about complaining. Would you mind explaining your thoughts there?
Yeah, quit it. Quit it. Simple as that. Quit that nonsense. And if you ever complain to me about something, we're done, you know? No, it's, look, we all, I complain too. There's no way. But really, it's a silly thing. It's a waste of energy. It's a waste of time. It really is. It really is. You know, just look at all the things you've got in your life and like compare that to this silliness that you're complaining about and erase that. Just erase it away and it should be gone. Like a breeze carries it away and out of your world, out of your perspective. There's no time for that. There's no time and energy to waste on those silly little things. Just get over it and move forward.
So Aaron on our Facebook live stream has a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So I just first wanted to say it's been a pleasure hearing you speak, and we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from a bunch of people watching our stream live. So just a question for you, just in your life, how have you dealt with people who didn't believe in you or didn't support you in things that you were doing? I'm sure, you know, growing up, there was probably some difficulty, but even now, I mean, who knows if you step on stage with someone has not worked with you, isn't familiar with you, gives you some pushback. I mean, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's happened many times. I deal with it by just performing to the best of my best of my ability and not judging them. You know, that's the number one thing too. Not judging the person that's judging you. That's hard to do. It's hard to do. But on the bandstand, in my profession, when you walk on stage, it's showtime. So sometimes these people are seeing me literally for the first time when we are about to start playing the first number of the night. And that's gotta be weird to a lot of people. I get that. And the only thing I can do is stay in the zone and prove my value and my worth by doing my job to the best of my ability and not paying any mind to what is happening on that level. And I think that's another thing that's served me throughout the years is if I paid attention to all the silly nonsense and bullying and comments that people have and all of their judgments, I would never have left my house. I would have never woken up and gotten out of bed. Things would have been an entirely different existence. I might not even be here, you know, today, you know, in this form. Things might have gone totally different, but I couldn't allow for that to happen. I'm alive, I'm a human being, and my value has nothing to do with your judgment of me. It's exactly what I feel about myself, how confident I am in myself and my body, and nothing else matters. And maybe that was a gift of being burned when I was 2, that I don't have awareness of life other than this. And I've always had to endure these types of situations. And I accept that as a possibility. But it's the choice every day we all have to make to stand firm in our place and to do the best possible job at living our lives as possible. And that means all of our life area, not just our occupation. That means if you're a parent, a a spouse or in a relationship, or a transaction at a food counter, in an airport. It doesn't matter where we are. It's our job to be the best human being we can possibly be for ourselves and for our communities. And I firmly believe in that, and I'm going to take that with me forever. And that's why I've been able to get over anything that's come my way, any judgment, any aggressions that have come my way, and prospered no matter what.
Thanks, Dan. Nick has a question with a Zoom call.
Hey, Dan. So, I mean, obviously so much is about mindset. From your experiences, obviously, experiencing more than most of us have, what is the recommendation for people to kind of get out of their own heads or get it out of their own ways? Because so much we kind of make it tougher on ourselves than it could be. And what are kind of some of the life lessons that you've kind of learned?
So there's a movie I love, The Shawshank Redemption, and there's a line in the movie where the main character says, "Get busy living or get busy dying," right? So get busy living. I'm with that guy. Get busy living. If you're living your life the best you possibly can and exploring all things that comes your way, you don't have time to have doubt. You don't have the time or energy to waste in that way because you're so busy falling in love with life every second of every day and exploring your skills and your world. How could you possibly have time to dedicate to anything else? I mean, it is all mindset, really. It's just the way you flip your perspective and the way you dedicate yourself to becoming better, and that's really as simple as I can put it. I don't really see it any other way. And maybe that's too simple for some people, but it's not. Maybe it's because we have too much in our heads, too much baggage. Throw that stuff away. Throw your baggage in the garbage. You're not taking it with you. So why do you hold on to it? Release it and you'll fly.
So powerful. Thank you. Dan, is there something else I should have asked you that I haven't?
No, there's no. No, you shouldn't ask me anything else. No, I'm just
nightmare.
no,
You're good.
I'm literally look, James. I'm literally open book. I mean, for real. Anything is fair game. But
so it's fair to say your hero's Rocky.
That's correct.
How about sports? Any favorite sports?
Yes, sir. I have two very favorite sports athletes. One is my hometown quarterback, Drew Brees. But before him, and my absolutely all-time favorite player is Larry Bird from the Boston Celtics. He was my favorite athlete of all time. And just his dedication to playing through any adversity, no matter what the cost, and finding a way to win, no matter what the cost. And he was aggressive, and he played through pain, and he fought for what he got, and he earned it every step of the way. And Drew did too, because he's an undersized quarterback with a powerful arm, with a vision like no other. And, he's done miraculous things for our city and our team. So those are admirable qualities, that I think we all possess. Some of us tend to focus on those things more than others. Those guys seem to excel because they cut that baggage out of their lives in the other areas, so they're more streamlined in what they do, and I don't do much with my life that is going to take my focus off of the things that I absolutely love. I live to the best life I possibly can, which takes all the time. But I'm a musician, and I dedicate most of my time to that. And when I'm not doing that, and if it's the winter, I ski. So you got living life to the best I possibly can, playing music, and skiing. And those are the three things that I do best. And, you know, I don't really want to think about all the other things that may or may not happen, what could or could not have been, all the possibilities, whatever. You know, I'll experience all that when it happens, if it happens. But I'm not going to waste my time thinking about things that may or may not happen, debilitating myself and halting my forward progress. I'm not interested in stopping. I want to get better as a musician, better as a skier, and better as a human being. So all of my focus is forward, not sideways and not rear. It's forward.
We have
Hey,
one more
James,
question from, oh yeah, Nick.
I have one more. Do we have time for one more question? Just came in
On Facebook and then
on Zoom.
Yeah, which is a great way. Yeah.
Okay. So Dan, who would you love to play with musically that you have not been able to play with yet?
Oh God. That's I try not to think about that question because I know how difficult it is to answer it. Wow, that's really hard to answer. Well, I guess because he's like one of the remaining legends who's still playing kind of is Wayne Shorter, who, you know, he's one of the last giants that we have left of the modern jazz era. And what's funny is because one of my really good friends is his drummer, Brian Blade. And, you know, so I would love to steal his gig, you know, steal Brian's gig and play with Wayne before Wayne passes on. Or maybe Chick Corea. Chick Corea's still alive. So, you know, he's still playing. So maybe Chick Corea or Wayne Shorter.
Thanks. Aaron, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. So Monica Kessler from Facebook said that she would be curious to hear about what books, if any, you found impactful and influential in your life. So any book recommendations?
Sure. I have one very profound book. Wayne Dyer is the author, and it's called The Power of Intention. It was a turning point for me in my life. It's a brilliant read. I've read it probably 4 or 5 times, and you get something brand new out of it every time you read it, or listen to it, or however you get it. Wayne Dyer, who has passed on a couple of years ago, was a good friend of mine, and we were able to do a tour, speaking tour together. He was a huge mentor to me, but before I ever knew him, I read his book, The Power of Intention, and after reading that book, I was so inspired. And I didn't do keynote speaking or anything like that at that time, but I did make a statement, a general statement out to the universe, that if I ever did any sort of speaking, I would want to speak with Wayne Dyer. And almost immediately, within 1 year, I was speaking on stage with Wayne Dyer and writing a book, and he wrote the foreword to my book. So it's like, okay, I guess this power of intention stuff really works.
Yeah, you got to put those intentions out there.
Yeah.
Oh, so well, Dan, how do people find out more about you, read your book, hear you play, watch you on social media?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Dan Caro, DANCARO. Instagram at Dan_Caro. And then I have a YouTube channel, also Dan Caro. And so follow me on all those if you want to. As far as playing music, when things get back to normal, you can find me in New Orleans. I really can't say more than that because I'm a freelancer, so I'm in different clubs and different bands every day. So, but you know what? All you gotta do is say, hey, where's that Bird dude? And then they'll probably say, oh, he's playing at this club tonight or whatever. I'm the only one around here. So You know, you can't miss me. But so come to New Orleans and experience that wonderful music culture. Otherwise, the book is available currently in digital only format. We have run out of the original pressing. So right now you can get it through Kindle and Nook for right now. Seeing if I can resurrect another printing of that physically, but right now, Kindle and Nook, so Amazon and Barnes & Noble if you're interested in that.
And the name of the book?
It's called The Gift of Fire, How I Made Adversity Work for Me.
Well, Dan, on behalf of the entire John L. Scott family, Lennox Scott, and our Facebook Friday team, we thank you for your time and sharing your incredible story of resiliency and inspiration. So I'd like to also thank Dan Wingar for introducing us. Thanks, Dan. This has been an incredible hour. I've watched the comments come through from our group, both on Facebook as well as Zoom. And people have been really impacted by the lens you use, your resiliency in life and ability to overcome with so many great odds. So thank you so much for joining us. And thanks to everyone else in the room for joining us today. Please join us next week, same time and same place. We're going to interview Andy Dane Carter. He's back in 2008, he became a realtor. He had $400 in his bank account. And he went from, in 2008, as we all know, was a tough year. And he went from a brand new agent to literally Forbes #3 top investor to watch in 2020. He's flipped over 600 homes, and he's got this amazing investor first wealth strategy for agents. He feels like all of us agents and real estate brokers that are in the business should also be building wealth in real estate, and he's got a strategy for that. So Andy will join us next week at 11 a.m., and I think it's going to be a great opportunity for everyone. So for questions about John L. Scott franchise opportunities, don't hesitate to reach out to me at jamescolburn@johnlscott.com to learn about our hub and our spoke franchise model. And then also we wish each of you a profitable and prosperous and purpose-driven real estate business as each of us play our role in contributing to the lives of others. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Dan, so much for joining us, taking the time and giving yourself to us today. So I appreciate that.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend.